Hey there again, welcome back. Full Face Andy here, doing a wheel bearing job on a 2002 E350. This is pretty common for most Fords, going all the way from the F series, the E series, I think from the 90s into like 2007 or something like that. They didn't change much. Nice thing about fleet vehicles, right? We're going to get in here, replace the wheel bearings, inner and outer, and the seal, and then I'm also going to put in different camber adjustment bushings, because at least on the other side the camber is off and I'm getting weird wearing on my tires. So we're going to do all that, and this is pretty much everything that I use. Jack up your vehicle, put jack stands under, all the important things, keep it safe, and then start twisting bolts. So this is actually a fairly easy job. Really nice with these vehicles. Everything's just pretty accessible. Just gotta pop this off. Pretty much just takes a little bit of love. You just want to work it around. And that's all there is to it. You can see this one's all dinged up. Somebody was pretty aggressive putting this on. This vehicle is relatively new to me, so that's why I'm doing these. But you could hear it hemming and hawing when I'm driving down the road. You have basically a castle with a little cotter pin in here keeping everything together. So we'll pop that off next. A lot of people just kind of break these off, but I like to keep them pretty good condition, just because I don't have a bunch of cotter pins sitting around, so I try not to bend them too much. This is the nut that holds your bearing on, and it shouldn't be that tight because they're basically just pressing the bearing to where it needs to be, and then you're holding it together with the cotter pin. Now, this is why it's really important to have brake cleaners sitting around, because no matter how good you are about keeping things clean, you're gonna get grease on your discs, right? That's just how it goes. So have a lot of paper towels around. The lint-free ones are best. And be ready for a mess. See, here's the outer bearing. It has this slotted washer basically that's actually kind of squared off on two sides. You got to keep that. You don't usually get a replacement with the new bearing set. Just looking at this, it doesn't look too bad. Sometimes you can really tell if things are bad because there'll be flat spots on the rollers here and whatnot. Nothing's looking hideous. I'm just gonna replace them anyway because I'm not sure how old these are. This is a little trick here to get the rotor off without taking the caliper completely off. You just undo the bottom bolt and then loosen up the top, and this will swing out of the way, and then I use a jack stand to kind of hold it, and then you can pop everything off. So I'm going to do that. Deep creep is usually what I use. It tends to work out pretty good. And there's some videos out there showing about how this stuff can be considered the best. Bolts holding on the caliper are 21 millimeter. If you actually care about your torque wrench, don't use it to bust bolts off. Use it only for tightening, but I don't care about this torque wrench. I have a different one, and this one's pretty much just my biggest ratcheting wrench. So pop that bottom caliper bolt all the way out, grab a jack stand. You should be able to kick the caliper up. And you should be able to brace it out of the way, and then this should just pop right off, just like that. If you notice any scarring or any deep grooves or anything, that could be a problem. Everything looks pretty good. Even this edge right here, sometimes, like on the other side, I had to sand down this top edge where the inner seal is, just to make it a better surface for sealing. This one's actually really smooth, so I don't need to do that over here. Now I'm gonna work on getting out the old bearings. I'm popping out the old bearings, so I don't really need to use a punch, but it's just good practice to use a brass punch. You're going to see this is why you need lots of paper towels, because it's going to get messy for a little bit. Depending on who packed the last set of bearings, you could have a ton of grease or you have very little grease. This one, it's got a ton. Oh, nice. So you can see the inner seal. This one could probably be reused. The rubber is still fairly soft, and I mean, just upon quick inspection, I don't see any cracks or anything. So you could just clean this up, brake cleaner or diesel works pretty good for cleaning off grease. So you could do that, but I have new seals just because they're, you know, not that expensive. You might as well if you're doing it. Looking at this, I don't see any prominent kind of scarring or low, you know, flat spots or anything. So this one's actually probably not too bad either. But the grease in there is pretty dirty. It's not looking the freshest. So I can't exactly tell how old these parts are, but I'm gonna replace them anyway. This is why I say have brake cleaner around and stuff, because inevitably you're gonna wind up touching your rotors and you're gonna have to clean them. So you gotta get all this gunk out and just do what you can to get most of it. And then what I do, brake cleaner, just start spraying. Spraying and wiping, that'll get the rest of the grease to come out. You don't want any contamination in there. You want just grease in the end, and you want your fresh grease. So you want to do as best a job as you can of cleaning out this stuff. If you have any grit, you know, we're dealing with rusty parts, that's bad, because that grit will get into your bearings, cause them to wear out premature. Looking at the races, you got your outer race, and then you have your inner race. This one looks a heck of a lot better than the driver's side did. This is the passenger side I'm working on. The driver's side inner race looked like crap. This one's got a pretty good color to it. It's not, you know, fouled up at all. But I'm going to replace the race anyway, because when I buy these new packs of bearings, your outer doesn't come with a race, and your inner should come with a race. So you can see right there, came with a race. So I don't know why that is, but just the inner comes with a race, the outer doesn't. Something about it. A lot of times if you're replacing rotors altogether, then they come with races pre-installed, so you don't even need that. But I'm gonna pop this race out and put the new one in just for peace of mind. Here comes the next part, punching out the old race. Now there's, you know, race pullers and race pressers and all that kind of stuff, taking care of that legitimately. But when you don't have that stuff, and what you do have is your highly important simple brass rod. All I did, I bought some brass stock, and I've cut up a few chunks, and I just use this to punch. I got some that are shaped. This one's just been you know, mushrooming over time, and that's not a big deal. But you take this, you put it on the edge of your race, and you start tapping, and you're just going to be working your way around till it pops out. So I'm going to work on that for a little bit. There we go. So simple as that. And when you use the brass, it doesn't wind up scarring it up. So for whatever reason, if I needed to reuse this, then I could. We're going to take some brake cleaner, spray it out, wipe it out, get it nice and clean, and then we're going to punch in the new race, put in our bearings that are packed, and then basically reverse order. So I got the inner race pounded in. I got the actual bearing packed with grease, pounded in, and then I got the seal pounded in. Make sure you use brass on all that kind of stuff. Now what I want to mess with is the camber caster adjustment bushing. This is how your camber caster comes stock from the factory. Can't actually adjust this at all. You could buy, you know, specific, like plus a couple of degrees, minus a couple of degrees, and replace the bushing. But if you just get one of these, you can adjust several degrees for camber and caster. The ears to this one has the bolt sitting kind of right in there. So you do need to remove the bolt, because now, watch this. I will take this and pound that back in. And now, this should, boom, pop right up and out, just like that. Camber, in and out, your caster, forward and back. So that's that. And it should be as simple as, well, popping open the horse collar with a little chisel type thing, and then putting this to neutral. Reading the directions, neutral is basically having N set to the outer slot. Boom. Install. Just by turning it a little bit, you can see it has a drastic effect. But yeah, so I got that on. I'm going to tighten this up, and then we'll get back to the wheel bearing. You don't have to do this, theoretically, but there is, you know, this space in between the outer bearing and inner bearing that doesn't have any, you know, moving parts going on. You don't have to put grease in there, but I will, just because it displaces the water and the moisture that might get in there. So not a ton, just a coating basically. I did the other bearing off camera. I'll do this one on camera just so you can see packing bearings. It's pretty dang easy if you don't know. And basically just make sure that your hands are clean, that you don't have any grit going on, and then you're going to take a diligent amount of grease in your hand. It's probably good. And then take your bearing and you're going to pack it by basically smacking it into the grease until you should see the grease coming through the top side like that, and then you just kind of rotate and work your way around. So I got it popping through the top side all the way around. Then I'm just going to take all this extra grease, kind of rub it in. Just make sure it's nice and covered everywhere, every nook and cranny. It's got grease packed in there. Like, you don't need an excessive amount of grease on your bearings. It's not going to really help, but it's not going to make any hindrance either. So just make sure everything's covered up. You got inside here greased up and everything. Then you're going to drop it in, but I'm not going to drop it in quite yet because I'm going to put this back up on and then drop it in. So I got my clean paper towel. I'm just going to set it right there for a moment. There we go. So I got that going pretty good. Now, clean hands again. Take your bearing, pop it in. Sometimes with the caliper in the way, it doesn't like sitting, so I gotta kind of move that down. There we go. Throw that little washer on there. Get your nut. Get your nut. And boom. There it is. What I'm going to do now is clean the rotor with the brake cleaner. Get the wheel back on. Get the caliper back in position. And then I'm going to actually adjust how tight I have my bearings put on. Alright, last thing. Real easy. You just want to adjust the tension on the bearing by turning that nut. When it's loose, you'll feel the tire wobble top and bottom, and you just want to snug it up until it don't wobble. Then put your castle with cotter pin in there. That's it. My gloves are ripping. That means I'm done. See you next time.